Hola guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to Steal the Spotlight. Today I have 18 trends for 2018, and pretty much the gist of this is going to be more of a chit chat sort of video where I'm breaking down some of the biggest reoccurring themes from the Spring Summer 18 collections, which obviously were a few months ago now, but we should be starting to see them trickle down now that we're going into the new year. I love doing trend videos this time of year, so I do have a couple of others planned. So if you have some favorite trends and you're like, why didn't she feature them this time around, then make sure you subscribe, because I am going to be doing my annual How to Style Runway Trends video, which is more of a lookbook sort of style. And I'm also going to be doing one that is kind of trends we saw towards the end of last year that are going to be sticking around with us for 2018, and also those trends that were in last year that are going to be out this time around. The first trend I wanted to talk about today is what actually inspired this whole sort of background setting. Not my usual aesthetic, but I'm very, very into those pastel sorbet tones we saw all over the runways. In particular, the color to really watch out for is that lavender lilac shade. If you can remember back to the Spring Summer 17 collections, designers like Fenty X Puma were using this lavender shade in more of a street style sort of setting. But this time around, it was more traditionally sophisticated designers like your Victoria Beckhams and Michael Kors. So I think that just goes to show you that you can inject this really soft, feminine color into more of a streetwear sort of style, and also your more traditional looks as well. Personally, I don't have any lavender or lilac clothing items, so I tried to include it in my eyeshadow here today. And I also have one pair of sunglasses as well, which ties in perfectly to the second trend of the kind of like futuristic X-Girl Matrix 90s sunglasses trend, which obviously was around last year as well, but it is still going strong on the runways at places like Prada, Sonia Rykiel, and obviously this is also one that's a big hit with your models and celebrities as well. You see it on people like Rihanna, Bella Hadid, Selena Gomez all the time. But for me, I really like to go to like the original, authentic source of your 90s it girls to get some really cool inspo for this style. The third trend I have is the resurgence of pop art and just printing art on clothing items in general. This is something that was really big on the runways, but I'm not too sure if just everyday people would really want to be taking on this trend, so it'll be interesting to find out. I feel like Zara could definitely kind of do their own take on it, and then it'll just end up on the clearance rack because it's not done right. But with that being said, Uniqlo does currently have a collection where they have used famous pop art artists and used their works just printed on plain t-shirts. So if you are interested in this trend, that might be an affordable option you can look into. A lot of the designers dabbling in this trend opted for bright, vibrant colors. There was Calvin Klein who took on more of a black and white sort of print, but still had colors injected into their collection. And I think for the most part, the kind of minimalism look that we've seen in previous years, it's gonna fade out a little bit, and people are really embracing some bright statement colors, which actually brings me to the fourth trend of rainbow. I think often people don't actually realize just how much current affairs can affect the fashion industry. If you guys have ever kind of studied fashion, I know when I was at uni, we would use WGSN, and all the trend forecasting is based around current affairs and how people actually feel in their everyday life, because that really kind of justifies how they want to dress as well. And I think that the Love Wins movement is just going to keep on going strong. We still have steps to take more so in the right direction. Here in Australia, we only just passed gay marriage laws, which feel like we are so behind the times, but I'm very glad that that has finally passed for the LGBTQ+ community, and I think that people are really going to continue to embrace that even in what they wear. Some of the big designers we saw take this on were Dolce & Gabbana, Moschino, Missoni, and Vianney, just to name a few. The next trend I want to talk about is one that has come back in a big way, and that is feathers. These were making a massive statement, especially at Saint Laurent, where it was really dramatic and over the top. But if you're looking for some more wearable inspiration, then check out Adam Selman, one of my favorite designers of the last couple of years. He is honestly doing an incredible job even if you can't afford his pieces, I feel like he is a great source of inspiration to kind of DIY and just reimagine what you already own or things you kind of find at the op shop and thrift store. So yeah, definitely check him out. If any of you managed to spot my night out lookbook I posted a couple of weeks ago now, I'll link it up in the cards above, but I actually featured a feather trim mini skirt that I got from Misguided like 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm still finding new ways to style that. I really like how it teamed up with the black blazer, so definitely go and check out that video. A trend that we are all very familiar with is plaid. Obviously in spring summer 17 it was all about gingham, but as we moved into the cooler autumn winter seasons, plaid made a comeback like it does almost every year. We saw a lot of grey suiting in plaid and check sort of patterns, and then also just your traditional red and kind of navy and green plaids as well. But it seems like it's going to stick around for the warmer weather too, which is exciting. Again, in some more traditional colours, but also hopefully in something a little bit more playful as well. It almost seems like the designers were a step behind with this one, and it really came in the form of street style first back in 2016 when like Kim Kardashian started wearing the plastic and transparent trend, and then subsequently like every high street shoe brand started doing those clear boots that everyone ended up hating. So I don't know if the public is ready to embrace this trend again so soon after the last time, but there were some really big designers pulling for this, like Chanel, Balmain, Calvin Klein, Valentino, and Burberry, so it will be interesting to see. One trend that I have down here is trench coats, and I do find it hard to include these more sort of classic staple items as trends, but honestly, there were a lot more trench coats than you see in usual seasons, so it had to be included. And it wasn't just your traditional trench, there was also a lot of reworked and kind of reimagined concepts that still fall under this bracket of trench coats, which I think is the most interesting part about it. But if you are someone who likes to invest in your clothing items a little bit more, then this is definitely the trend for you, because even in years to come when not every second person is wearing it, you'll still look really chic and classic. There's a lot of different designers and styles to turn for inspiration for this one, but I think the most common image I have seen is definitely the trench from Loewe. I can't pronounce it, but hopefully you know the designer I mean. Theirs was the trench coat that then like halfway down turns into all fringing across the bottom. I have seen that image thousands of times. Next up is the trend of polka dots, and I feel like this is more of a micro trend. There wasn't as many designers on board with this, but it was spotted at Carolina Herrera, Jason Wu, Balenciaga, and a couple of others that I'm not gonna try and pronounce. And I believe all of these were actually in black and white, but of varying sizes of dots. So when it comes to the size of the print, there's no kind of hard and fast rules. Not that there ever is hard and fast rules in fashion, but you guys know what I mean. I feel like this is more so just a continuation of the 80s trends we saw all throughout last year. And you might think that polka dots are kind of too early to be 80s, more of a 50s print almost, even 40s maybe, but you have to keep in mind that the 80s took a lot of trend inspiration from decades gone by, just like we do today. So it's really not a new concept at all. And the next trend I want to talk about is also 80s inspired, and that is the really puffball, puffed sleeve trend. Saw this one at Saint Laurent, Gucci, Isabel Marant, Off-White. Off-White was actually one of my favorite interpretations of this. Virgil's collection was inspired by Princess Diana herself, and you guys know I love a pop culture reference when it comes to dress ups, so absolutely loved that. I figured we'd switch gears a little bit and talk about a trend that is very wearable and something that we've pretty much seen everyone and their mother already rock, which is straw accessories. Throughout spring, summer, the little straw bags were everywhere. It's summer here in Australia at the moment and freaking hot right now, by the way. And I can confirm that the straw bags are still going strong and loved by many, myself included. And this time around, designers tried to up the ante with really dramatic, oversized hats at shows like Del Pozo, Gucci, and Missoni. And while I doubt that hats that dramatic are really gonna catch on, I do think that straw hats, straw bags are sticking around for at least another season. Next up is a trend that is kind of taking over from a previous trend. Finally, bomber jackets are out. It is all about the windbreaker, anorak, parka sort of situation. You know what I'm referring to. And I think the really cool thing about this is that it's taking that sportswear, sports luxe trend that we have been stuck with for like the better part of a decade now and giving it more of a retro rewrite. We saw them on designers like Calvin Klein, Marc Jacobs, Oscar de la Renta, Valentino, Fenty X Puma. Literally, I could go on all day. For me personally, the way I like to do it is just with 80s vintage windbreakers. I've gotten a few of retro style vintage before. They usually have a pretty good selection, so definitely check them out if you're interested. A trend that isn't quite as prominent is embellished straps. It is more of a smaller detail, so I guess it's not something that people really stand up and take notice of, but I think it is a really, really nice touch, especially for those of us who are too lazy to be bothered with jewelry, because it's just a nice way to kind of like bedazzle your décolletage without wearing a necklace, I guess. I feel like that's such a weird way of putting it, but you guys know what I mean. And you can do this with more like diamantes, gold chains, whatever you're feeling. The other great thing about it is that it's really, really easy to DIY. I think I'm gonna include it in a DIY video I have coming up really, really soon, so stay tuned for that. Now I want to talk about some denim trends. And obviously denim had a massive comeback in terms of runways and designer collections over the last few years now, but mostly for the really distressed denim. This time around, it is about dark denim, specifically in sets. And also at the resort collections, we saw a big comeback for super duper wide jeans. Instantly, this reminded me of the Ace pants I have from I Am Gia, which by the way, totally make me feel like I should be in a TLC music video every time I wear them, but I love those. And they were kind of expensive for me because I don't splurge very often. I'm more of a thrifter, bargain shopper kind of gal, so I'm glad to see that that is going to be a big trend for 2018 as well, and I can get a lot of wear out of those bad boys. I believe we are up to trend number 15, and I want to talk about sheer fabrics. Sheer is always in to some extent, so it's almost boring to talk about, but this year they were taking the free the nipple movement to the next level, especially since there was so much organza sort of fabric. I believe that's what it was anyway, which is really, really sheer. Personally, I find it super difficult to style, so probably not something I'll be taking on board. If I want to do the sheer sort of trend, I'm still going to be sticking to my lace fabrics. That's just what works for me personally though. Okay, we all know it comes around every year for the warmer weather. This time around, your groundbreaking florals are gonna have more of a retro sort of vibe, specifically a 60s influence, which personally I love. It is one of my favorites because I don't know, there's something a little bit more fun and adventurous about it rather than more of a whimsical sort of feel to it. One designer that I think really nailed this aesthetic is Marni, and they're not someone that I was that familiar with prior, but they drew me in with this collection. And I actually already have my own authentic 60s floral skirt, which I picked up when I was inspired by the Miu Miu collection, which I believe was just last season. I do actually have another print I wanted to talk about, which is snakeskin print. I feel like I have sort of forced this one in here just because of my own personal bias. I absolutely love snakeskin print because it gives me total Coyote Ugly, early 2000 vibes, totally my aesthetic. You can play it up like that, but then I guess on the other hand, you can also totally downplay it with just a simple black and white snakeskin boot as well. So you can sort of make it work for different personal styles as well. If you are looking for some designer inspo, the few designers that did feature it were Chloe, Bottega Veneta, Salvatore Ferragamo, Fendi, Tod's. I think that is about it though, which I believe brings us to our 18th and final trend, which is fringe. For me personally, this is kind of lackluster. I don't know why I left it till last because it's in and out every other season, which makes it kind of boring for me, but there's no denying it was a big hit this time around. And we did see kind of a new take on it, especially at places like Calvin Klein, where they really were inspired by like the all-American cheerleader, which totally plays into their Americana aesthetic they've had for the last couple of seasons, which is a trend from last year that I think is still kind of holding on in 2018 as well, at least for the first half. And then of course there is again the Loewe trench coat that I mentioned earlier on as well, which also falls under this trend, so they're a bit of a double whammy. But yeah, I'm sorry I ended it on such a lackluster trend, but I would love to hear from you guys in the comments on what trends you are most looking forward to this year, whether I featured them here today or not, whatever ones you're into. And if you did enjoy this type of video, give it a big thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss out on the other 2 trend videos I have coming up really, really soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Mwah.